I'm Nicole Nalepa, and you're listening to Mommyhood Unscripted, real talk about moms for moms. Welcome, everyone. Oh my gosh, this is such an exciting moment. My name is Nicole Nalepa. I am so excited to bring you the first episode of Mommyhood Unscripted. This is all about what it's like to be a mom, if you're possibly thinking about being a mom, if you're a fur baby mom, if you were a mom and you're, just enjoying seeing your kids grow up. I don't know. This is a podcast for anyone and everyone, all parents, and it's just such an exciting opportunity to be able to bring this to you. So just a little background I want to give you on what kickstarted this whole thing. I'm a new mom to a sweet little boy. He's 8 months now. And my entire world changed, and in the most beautiful, amazing way. And, obviously with changes comes some amazing hurdles and challenges and new sets of experiences that, you may not know how to exactly figure out and navigate. So the whole point of bringing you this podcast, Mommyhood Unscripted, is about being as real as possible, in a judgment-free zone. I'm figuring it out right now. I am literally going through the motions and trying to make the best of this experience. But I also want to share you some of my experiences. I want to talk with real people, real moms, experts, but also people who are going through this as well with us. This is going to be your support system. This is going to be the place that you can turn to when you feel like no one else in the world understands what you are going through. You are not alone, and we're just going to figure it all out. Motherhood is beautiful, but it's messy, and there's no filters, and there's nothing that you can make up about it. And I think the best way to be honest means bringing forth these types of real conversations and people to kind of help guide us along the way. So that's what this is all about. We're also going to have a few laughs as well, of course. I don't know. I have some photos, which you're going to see in a second, and it shows my son's feet. And I'm pretty sure I have spit up in my hair, too, when I took this photo. It was during my maternity leave. So a quick little background about me for those of you who are listening and you're not familiar with Channel 3. It's WFSB TV. It's the CBS affiliate in Connecticut. I'm the morning co-anchor on our morning newscasts. But again, when I leave here, I'm a mom. I'm just like any old mom. And that's why I'm so excited to have this platform to bring to any moms out there in the world who are listening. So that's a little bit of a rundown as to what this podcast is going to be about and what you can expect. It is January. It's 2020, which is so hard to believe. I'm still writing 2019 on everything. But with that said, a new year comes a new set of resolutions, goals, if you will. I know a lot of people don't like to call them resolutions, but if you're a mom, or if you're going to be a mom and your entire body is changing and you can't keep up with all the changes, how do you welcome in a new year? It's hard to reset. It's hard to take care of yourself. And let's be honest, being a mom is stressful. And then if you couple that with adding the pressure of trying to do things like, making healthy meals for your family, taking care of yourself, that's where it can get a little harder. And it's something that I didn't even think of. I am not a huge cook. I'm trying to tap into that realm. And especially my son is giving me more of a reason to put such energy forth to prepping meals and trying to make him some food, which we'll get into that. But this is all about, new year, how do you be healthy? And how do you make sure that you're passing that along to your kid? So that's where our guest comes in this morning. Cara is joining us. She is a licensed nutritionist who has worked for an internist in a school system, and then most recently at a weight loss center. But not only is she a working mom, this is what I love, she just recently started her own business. Awesome. It's called Nourish and Nosh Nutrition, located on the Connecticut shoreline in the quaint town of Madison. Cara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
All right. Did I pronounce your last name correct?
Yes, Nook.
Nook. Okay. I was thinking Pac-Man and then Nuke, and I just want to make sure, We got that right.
There's a reason the business was called Nourish and Nosh Nutrition and not my name. So I wanted something that was easy to roll off the tongue and looks nice on a logo.
Well, there you go. Nourish and Nosh. Let's start there.
Sure.
Where did you come up with that name?
So I found myself many times when counseling clients to use the word nosh. Noshing on a snack is just a word I often used. And when I was looking to start my own business, the word nourish kept popping up. And having worked for a weight loss center, I wanted to do something where instead of focusing on people just trying to lose weight, I wanted to focus more on the big picture, looking at food as nourishment, choosing foods that are going to nourish us both physically and emotionally. So I do a lot in my new business with a whole body approach. So I do talk a lot about self-care. I talk about sleep. I talk about all these things that factor into people's stress levels. So listen, I could tell people all day long, eat this, but if they are so tired, they hate their job and they're miserable, they're not going to listen to me. So my approach is a little bit more whole body in Nourish and Nosh. And so the word nourish really, I felt strongly about having that. And then they both had N and
get the alliteration.
It just sort of worked and it came together.
That's awesome.
Nicely, yeah.
So what I love about you is you are a working mom. I mean, you have your own business, but you also have a little one at home.
I do. I have a 15-month-old. I started Nourish and Nosh. Part of my goal was to start it before she turned 1. And I succeeded at about a month to the day. I started my business on September 4th and she's October 4th. And, everyone gave me the same advice. You're a mom now. Like, are you sure you want to take this plunge? And my response was always 100%. Like, now is the time to do it. I'm not driving her to soccer practice. Like, at the time she was around your son's age. It was hard. Don't get me wrong. I took the summer off to figure it out, and it was really hard. I'm a nutritionist. I don't have a business degree or business background. So that was really hard to learn. I did a lot of it while she was sleeping, a lot of late nights on the internet figuring it all out.
Wait, are you telling me that you weren't sleeping when your baby was sleeping? Because I can't tell you how many people have given that advice, and I'm going, that's a great idea, but I
never did that. I never,
Okay.
unless I was sick, like I really never did that. I'm a night owl by nature, so I do get a lot of work done at nighttime. Mornings are a challenge. She's not a great sleeper, so it was definitely a shift when I did have the time off to then kind of start again in September with the early mornings and having to be places, which was exciting. And I really enjoyed that time off I had with her. It was also a really challenging 2 months of just learning a whole new thing. And then on top of that, like, again, making sure, like, feeding the child, because again, that also coincided with her eating food. So then it was a lot. This summer was both amazing and challenging in so many different ways, but I'm happy that I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're here today, and I'm so excited to just dive right in and talk about so many different things that, all women may be dealing with.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you fall in the line, but if you're a new parent, possibly thinking about becoming a parent, expecting, there's so many different sets of challenges, right, that come along with that. And I know I can speak right now that my husband and I have probably eaten cereal for dinner more often than not. I wish I loved cooking. I'm not a huge lover of being in the kitchen making meals. I'm trying to get better about that.
And what's interesting with that is, like, especially having it be January and post-holiday, a lot of people are getting Instant Pots for the holiday. Which I feel like we are sort of shifting to getting back in the kitchen, but making it as efficient as possible. That's a big thing when I'm counseling people, especially moms or parents. And dads, of course.
Yeah.
Can't forget about them.
We are not forgetting about the dads in this mommy podcast, by the way.
But it's utilizing the time we're in the kitchen, and because the days of I'm just going to stand over the pot, no one has time for that. Like, I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that.
Right.
So when I'm counseling people and some of the recipes I suggest, it's like it's 2020. We can cut corners. They sell things pre-cut at the supermarket. The supermarkets are making it easier for us. But sometimes it's still overwhelming. Like, well, where do I start? How do I do this all? Like, I don't really like cooking. And the suggestion I say to people is, you could always just throw things in a pan and poke it. Like, throw it in a pan and poke it is always my go-to.
Poke it. I like that.
Like, throw it in the pan, poke it around until it's cooked, and then you have a meal. Like, it doesn't have to be this, I envision, like, an Italian grandma being in the kitchen all day.
The aromas coming from the kitchen. Yeah.
So a lot of times we don't have time for that.
Right.
So stick it in a pan and poke it, and you have, a nutritious meal. Obviously, depending on the items that you choose to put in the pan, and making sure you cook it thoroughly. But it's, my approach, even for meal planning, has changed tremendously. My approach to meal planning has changed 100% since becoming a mom, because I used to talk about, like, on Sundays you can, like, prep things. I do not have time on Sunday to do this. And so my approach has changed to, and I just did a blog post about this, like, don't feel the overwhelming pressure to do it all in one day to make it perfect. Break it up into small, manageable tasks. And that's what we were saying before, when your child is strapped into a high chair or any sort of thing that they're safe and secure, that's a time I will get so many things done in my kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're there and, like, they're happy and they're content. I can see them, but I'm also going to do as much as I can. But what's tough about having small children is that window of time, you never know when it's going to end. It's like when people say, like, oh, sleep when the baby sleeps. I can get so much stuff done in that time, and I don't know when they're going to wake up. Right. So I can't, like...
It's like a game.
It is a game. They're like a little ticking time. I was thinking about this at like 2 o'clock this morning. As I'm laying her down in her crib, she's, like, everyone is going through, teething and cold. And I'm laying her down. I'm like, it really does feel like I'm putting down dynamite. I'm just like, please don't wake up. Please don't wake up. And I'm shutting the door, and I feel like I've had this, you're shutting that door to their room, like, please, just go back to sleep. Please, you have no idea about it.
Just, give me like 5 minutes so I can maybe finish folding the laundry from a week ago.
Right. And that is such a challenge. So then now when I'm counseling people, and especially new moms, I can't say to them, like, oh, just do all your shopping and prep in one day. That's not an option. And I feel like if I were to say that, it would just turn people off, or they would get frustrated. So I definitely have changed my approach both to my new moms and now also being an entrepreneur and trying to, there's just not enough hours in the day. So I just need to be really strategic. And here's the thing. Sometimes I fail. Sometimes I have cereal for dinner like that. And that's okay.
Right.
Because it takes time. It takes practice. It takes also slowly building a, maybe 2 to 3 dishes that are your go-tos, and making sure you always have those ingredients on hand. Many people, I'll say 5, but like a new mom, I'll say 3. And, for many people, they'll say, before you have the baby, cook the food and freeze it. Well, I don't know about you. I was I gave birth in October. It was really hot. I was not in the mood to do that. You're also 9 months pregnant. So you're so uncomfortable that the thought of like cook, and she came early, so I couldn't have even prepared anyway.
My son came early too.
Right. And
we didn't even pack a hospital bag.
Same here. I did it that morning on my way to the hospital. I'm like, what do I need?
Right.
Which makes it tough. And it's like, wow, I never cooked anything. And I remember I had a friend bring me cut up carrots and celery. And I was like, wow, that was the nicest thing ever. Like, I don't want to cut celery right now. I don't want to cut carrots, but she's bringing it to me pre-cut. Like, this is so nice. And soup, I'm like, okay. Like, I appreciated that. And now for my friends who are pregnant, I think about the things I'm going to bring them. And
that is, by the way, just a quick little pro tip here for anyone who thinks that they can, what can I do after you have a baby or even before? Food.
Always food. Or pre-cut things.
Pre-cut. I just learned that.
I never, I loved it so much. And so now, as my friends are, we're at the age where our friends are having babies. And it's like, I will bring them things they could freeze, things that they can just, because the act of just washing and cutting things when you have a newborn, like, it's not going to happen. Nope. And you can't put all that pressure on somebody else. Your mom's visiting and it's like, I know you want to play with the baby, but can you go?
Right. Can you please cook me a meal? Or, my husband coming home and I'm trying. This is the scene in my house usually. It's a little chaotic. I have the dog. I have a cutting board on the counter with, maybe a carrot cut up, and then, toys are strewn everywhere. And my husband coming in saying, oh, hey, how's it going? Well, here, can you please take George because I want to finish at least cutting up another carrot until. Right. And, by the time it's 6 o'clock and I haven't even started cooking yet or finishing prepping. It's overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. And, and this is where sometimes it's like a little tough love when I tell people, like, you still just have to get it done.
Yeah.
Cereal could always be a backup. Like, listen, don't get me wrong. And sometimes, and this is why I tell a lot of people, like, you may have the best intentions, but then something could happen. I mean, you have these unpredictable tiny humans that at any given time can make a mess. I'll leave it at that. And you have to stop everything you're doing. And that's really hard when you're cooking because it's not safe to step away from the stove.
Right.
That's one thing I definitely should say. Be smart about if you are trying to build in some healthy habits, especially with it being the new year, be realistic and enlist help. And my heart always goes out to the people who don't have a support system, and that's really challenging. But I always have to say, like, be smart about when your time in the kitchen, that you're not turning the oven on or the stovetop on and then walking away. That's why, like, I talk about a lot of my cooking is done when my daughter's in her high chair. And she's also at the age now where she's eating more food, so I could be cutting things and handing them to her. And she's kind of a slow eater, which works to my advantage.
Yeah.
Because then I could do something, if I'm home alone with her, do something on the stove. But she's happy as can be. Sometimes I'll even put toys in front of her. But just so that she's safe, I'm not walking away from a stovetop. So that is something I definitely should add in because, safety first. And for those of us who are alone at times, you really need to make sure you're not doing anything that's going to jeopardize
their safety.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's such a good tip because there have been some moments where I've started the stove and I think that George is good. And then all of a sudden he starts wailing or crying and I have to, do some deductive reasoning. I have to turn off the stove and make sure everything is set if this is going to take longer.
Right.
So I might have to let him cry for just a quick extra second
and
for his safety.
Exactly. and too, like, with being moms, our brains are I joke with women, I'm like, at any given time we have 1,000 things in our head and we're juggling so many things. And so I'm a big believer in setting reminders for myself because there have been times where, how many times, like, you do laundry and it has something that you need for him, but you never think to put it in the dryer. And then all of a sudden, like, you're heading to daycare and you're like, wow, I don't have, whatever it is. And you're like, oh, I should have reminded myself. Like, that's, and so with cooking too, I set multiple timers. I set reminders to defrost meat sometimes.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because that's something I'll always forget. Yeah. And, we have a big bulk store that just opened near us. And so it's great. Like, we can stock up on frozen protein. But then it's useless if you don't remember to defrost it. And you have a short window of time to actually cook something.
Right.
Or you're throwing something in a crock pot. I don't know if it's true, but I wouldn't throw something frozen in our crock pot because I think it throws off the cooking time.
An Instant Pot, right, is
Instant
better.
Pot, maybe.
Yeah.
But that, I even get scared sometimes using the Instant Pot with the baby in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like, I know nothing's going to happen, but
with the release of the hot
steam. With the release
steam,
thing, it does kind of freak me out. And so it's sort of like this whole timing, and I'm only a couple months ahead of you, but it's taken me a lot of trial and error to figure out, what are my quick meals? And I will say there's something to be said about making a list. And a lot, that's a suggestion I often give to people who are feeling like they're overwhelmed and they don't know where to begin. And again, with my meal planning approach changing, I'm not going to preach, make all your things on a Sunday, because that's just not going to work. So maybe it's finding 3 to 5 of your go-to favorite easy meals that you then, and I am old-fashioned, write it down and write down the ingredients you have to have. And so, again, as women, this is very specific to women, we suffer a lot from decision fatigue. We're constantly making decisions. People are asking us.
I'm so happy someone just said that.
Right? It's tough. And so, that's, someone told me once that's where Pizza Friday came from, because women at the end of the week, what do you have for dinner? I don't care. Let's just have pizza. I don't know if that's true, but it kind of makes sense because we're making decisions all day long. Right. So by having a little list of your go-to meals and the ingredients that are essential, you can, A, make sure you have those ingredients on hand, and B, when you don't want to make a decision, you just pull from that list. So that just makes life a little bit easier. It gets more challenging when the tiny human starts eating. Like, my daughter will eat sometimes what we're eating. But again, I'm an entrepreneur. Sometimes I'm not cooking, and this is such a bad habit, I'm not cooking my dinner till after she goes to bed. Or I'm getting her fed, bathed, and put to bed while my husband's preparing it.
Hence why my husband is eating cereal some nights with me. Yeah. I love you, honey.
Because it's hard. It's really hard. And I love my honey too, but he'll just grill things, which is fine. Yeah. It is kind of simple. It is kind of basic, but I'm checking off all the points. I'm getting a protein. I'm getting my vegetables in. I rely heavily on steamed vegetables more so, which just and again, having those on hand, I think, is always a tip I have. And always check, just the nutritionist, always check that your steamed vegetables are just simple, not the ones with the sauces. Get the plain ones. Those are great to stock up on in an emergency, or if you have your protein but you didn't purchase anything, because again, sometimes we go to the supermarket and we just blank. That happens.
So that happens to you. You'll go and have you had that mom fatigue brain where I can't explain to you how much I have wanted and yearned to go to a grocery store after having my son. That used to be the last thing on my list, and now I'm like, please, I'll go to the store. And my husband will say, oh no, I can go if you want, pick it up on the way home. No, I'll go. If you just come home, I would love to go to the store. But then I get there and I just stare at the aisles.
Well, now do you bring a list?
Sometimes, but then sometimes I forget a pen now to cross off on the list, so then I stare at the aisles.
So that my suggestion, you got to bring a list.
No. I need to organize my list too per section. That has
I have
helped
a template.
me a little
Let me
bit.
send it to
you.
you.
You do?
I just put together a template because this was awesome. A need, and you can certainly post it on wherever I can get it to you.
Thank you.
It has my logo. It's nothing trademark. It's just I like how it's organized.
Yeah.
And because I was struggling with the same thing, and a lot of times I'll keep I have scrap paper at my desk at work, and it almost turns into this ongoing list where as things, and this is, I don't know if this is a mom thing or a woman thing or a human thing, it pops into your head, and if it doesn't go on paper, it disappears.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I'm a big believer in writing down those meals that are your go-tos, the appropriate, there could be variation between the vegetable, but having your protein, the flavor profile that you're looking for. Maybe it's Italian and you need tomato sauce. Maybe it's Middle Eastern and you need to have those spices. Sometimes we run out of spices and we forget to put them on the shopping list, and you go to make the meal and you're like, wow, I have no cumin or whatever.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in the inventory, so knowing what you have on hand, but then also making those lists, and so you could just pull from it and be like, okay, I'm in the mood for an Asian stir fry. So I have sesame oil, I have coconut aminos, I have ginger. Maybe it's dried ginger, maybe it's fresh ginger, doesn't matter. And you have some leftover chicken and some frozen riced cauliflower is always a great addition to any stir fry because it just adds bulk, it adds nutrition, doesn't really add flavor, but it takes on the flavor of whatever you're putting on it. And so then you can kind of throw something together really quick, and using that inspiration of what flavor you're looking for is sort of helpful. But again, writing it down and having that list so you know what you need. And that's why I like the frozen veggies on hand, because whatever dish you have, if you want to elevate the nutrition of it, add in a vegetable. That's always my suggestion for anyone, whether they're pregnant, thinking about becoming pregnant, new mom, going through menopause, elderly, vegetables. And so this day and age, having the frozen on hand can just really add to a dish the nutrition and the nourishment, making your meal more nourishing. Again, the word nourishment. So that's always a good suggestion I have for anyone.
And those frozen vegetables come in handy if you want to make some baby food, right?
Yeah. So actually, I'm glad that you bring this up. So no one taught me this, but I feel like I share this with people and they're like, oh, it's a great idea. So when you have a tiny human who is, just learning to pick up the food with their hands and they're feeding themselves, it's great to keep things like frozen peas on hand or some of the frozen mixed bags, because I'll cut the bag, like broccoli is another one. I'll cut the bag, the frozen bag, cut it. I'll cook some, boil some water, throw the frozen peas or frozen broccoli in the water, put the rest of the bag away, let it sit for a couple minutes, strain it, and then that's where I just give it to her. So I'm not cooking an entire bag of peas,
right, or
an entire big thing, but I'm just pulling little bits from it. And that's been super helpful if I have no food for anyone planned, but at least I know she's getting some vegetable and peas or broccoli. The other thing too, and this is more appropriate for your son, and we've heard this before, but the freezer or the ice pack trays of putting the food in there. So that trick, and I know I'm not innovative by bringing that up, but it'd be the end of the night, we'd be cooking our food. I would put, and I did buy one of those old-fashioned steamers that you put in the saucepan.
At the metal
ones,
looking
yes.
one? Yeah.
So I'd put that in, I'd boil the water, I'd put it in, and while I was cooking our food, I would quickly, and we're talking quick because you got to be efficient when you're a mom, I'd quickly peel some carrots, I'd peel some sweet potato, throw it in, set a timer, because you always need timers, and I would be doing something else. So my time would be spent in the kitchen. I could be washing dishes. I could be doing anything. I'd be going through mail, but I'd be in the kitchen while her food was cooking. Timer would go off. I'd strain it. I used an immersion blender, so the ones that you would often use for soup.
Okay.
Put in a bowl.
It's handheld, right?
The handheld ones, yeah. Super easy to clean. You just rinse it. And I would blend her food, let it cool, spoon it into the frozen, the ice cube tray, freeze it, crack them, and put them in a Ziploc. And so when it was mealtime, I would, and I don't know if there's like a weird thing, I would mix her veggies. So I would do like, zucchini is really watery, so it would thin out the sweet potato. Oh. So I would do like a zucchini, a sweet potato, and like a broccoli. I sometimes mix broccoli with other veggies and then heat them up together, stir it together. So she always had a mix of vegetables, and she loved it. And it was no extra, the amount of effort that went into it was minimal. Because again, I'm in my kitchen anyway. If I'm making a soup and I'm cutting carrots, onion, celery, I'm not going to give her pureed onion, right. But like I'll peel a few extra carrots, leave it aside, and then do that steam thing. And so what was nice is I would do like one round of it would yield, I think something like, for some reason the number 16 is coming in my head, like it would yield a bunch of the little cubes.
And usually 1 cube equals like 1 ounce.
Yeah, roughly. And so as she got older, sometimes it was 1 cube, sometimes it was 2. Eventually she got to 3 before we kind of stopped doing that. But it was, and now I even do it where I'll cook a bunch of chicken for her, again, just to have a protein on hand, and then put the chicken in the ice cube tray and then put it in the Ziploc. And so if we've traveled and she's going to daycare on a Monday, I don't have any leftover chicken or anything, any protein for her, I can pull from the frozen bag.
Oh,
so it's
awesome.
It's like an amazing emergency food. I mean, and I rely a lot, like frozen edamame she loves to eat.
That's a pretty exotic sounding. But although it's
in our supermarket,
it's
easy peasy. She likes those little like handheld things that she could pick up. And so it made my life a lot easier that it was, and that's the whole thing. Like you have to be in the kitchen maybe to go through whatever. Use your time wisely. I tell people, like, if you're cooking something that requires you to stand at the stove and, your husband's home, like he's playing with the baby, and you're at the stove, turn your oven on and roast whatever veggies you have. Like, I'm a big believer in multitasking, even though they say like multitasking is not suggested. When you're a mom,
you have to.
And
it's a survival skill.
Exactly.
Right.
And so when you're standing there, it's like, how much can I possibly get done? Like, I joke with my husband sometimes that I could clean out the entire, or empty the entire dishwasher in the 2 minutes and 30 seconds it takes for my oatmeal to cook. I mean, I kind of like, I'm doing it quickly, but I'm like, can I do this in 2 minutes? And I can, because I'm a woman. I'm a mom, and I can do anything.
You can do anything.
But it's stressful. It adds a lot of pressure to ourselves. So you have to kind of break it up into these like manageable tasks. And so if you're standing there, what else could I be doing? The steaming ice cube thing is a huge lifesaver, and I've always heard about it.
Yeah.
But then actively doing it, it was not hard. And the immersion blender, a lot of people use a food processor. I don't have one of those. The immersion blender was amazing. I would just rinse it immediately after using it, and it just no time at all. Cleanup was a breeze.
And then that way you go into your freezer and you have Ziploc bags of different ice cubes.
I would do protein and veggies in one, and then in the summertime, when the berries were on sale and delicious and yummy, I would cut them and freeze those. And that was really great. I mean, now I'm using frozen blueberries like in her oatmeal and her yogurt. I'll just defrost them really quick. So that's another little hack. We're in the Northeast and our fruit is okay right now, but it's not ideal. And so I'll buy the frozen fruit. Like this morning, I think I microwaved 2 or 3 frozen strawberries, cut them up. And when you defrost it, the juice comes out because it's frozen. And I used that to flavor her oatmeal. And I do that with blueberries.
Great.
And, like, it's just easy.
And that has to help their palate, too. You're introducing them to all these fresh foods and different combinations. And I mean,
yeah. And you know, she's going through a phase right now. But I do think, I know.
One of many to come.
One of many phases. She has a bunch of teeth coming in. So I don't know how much that plays a role. If, like, the chicken was too hard on her gums. She's loving black beans right now. She's just, which is great. I mean, that's something where being a nutritionist, one of my big things with hers is she getting enough protein and diverse enough with the vegetables. And kids are funny, you know, they can like something one day, and that's why I like doing the frozen stuff. So I'm not cooking a ton of things for her,
right? Because
she may find, you know, one day you don't like it. It's like, well, I'm not going to waste food.
Right.
That's another thing. I don't like. I mean, you have a dog. I have a dog.
They benefit greatly.
My dog, we've had to stop giving her so much dinner because I'm like, she's eating what she's. The remnants or what she throws. When I would puree the veggies and I'd have the bowl that would have like the leftover stuff, and part of me is like, well, this is good for my dog. Like, she's getting more vegetables. Right. I would let her lick that bowl because I'm like,
hey, whatever works, you know.
You could probably benefit from some carrots, you know, little dogs. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, we feed our dog carrots for a treat, so he knows the word too. So.
Oh, really?
Ringo knows the word. Carrots? What?
Oh, that's so funny.
So, no, those are such great. I love that. You call them hacks.
Yes.
You know, pro tips, hacks. Because it's just hard. It's that juggling act. And, you know, for the mom that's working, even the mom that's home all day and trying to do a lot of different things, you know, it's never ending, and it's all relative depending on, it doesn't depend, I should say, on what your situation is. Everything is relative. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is be here going, you know what? We get it. Yeah. We're experiencing it. We're living it, but we're here to tell you that you can do it. And we're going to be cheering you on from the sidelines.
I mean, that's the thing. It's hard. And what works one week, and that's the thing, like, especially with being the new year, you know, people are like, I'm going to start January with all these healthy habits, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a big believer in that. But sometimes I break it down to, what are your current routines? And where in our routine can we do some work? And maybe, you know, taking a couple minutes in the morning or at night, doesn't matter. You know, I've counseled women who, like you, kind of have wonky schedules. And so you just have to make it work, of seeing like, well, what can I do today that I can add into my routine that will yield a positive result? Maybe it's setting an alarm to go to bed earlier if that's something you're struggling with, or, you know, while the baby is happy sitting somewhere, you know, maybe during that time, instead of scrolling Instagram, I'm going to go do something a little bit more beneficial to your life, their life, everyone's life. So it's tweaking routines. I don't like when people are like, I need to change everything in January. Right. Well, then it's a recipe for disaster. Come February, you're like, well, that didn't really work out. So it's breaking it up into small, manageable things that just work to benefit everyone's life. A happy mom is a happy, you know,
happy everyone.
Happy everyone.
Happy life, happy everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest. I think that has been one of the biggest challenges that I've been trying to overcome, is you have all these grand ideas and plans, or you have these preconceived notions as to what you think being a mom is, or, you know, when I have the baby, I'm going to be doing this, and this.
Isn't it crazy how that goes right out?
Goodbye. Woo, there. I'm
going to organize that closet when I'm on my maternity leave. I didn't organize anything.
Yeah. You know what I did? I organized putting my feet up on the couch and just resting.
Watch a lot of Netflix.
Oh, yeah. I organized my Netflix list.
Yes.
But, you know, it's just, you don't know what you're going to do until you experience it. And I think that's the biggest letdown for moms, is you have these ideas, and then when it doesn't happen, then you get disappointed. And that goes with any resolutions for anyone out there, you know, whether you're a parent or not. It's what I love is your approach of saying, hey, wait a second, you know, you can have some great ideas and plans, but be realistic about it.
Exactly.
And start really small. And I say this to a lot of my coworkers, you know, they say, oh, how you doing? I'm like, doing great. You know, oh, is the baby sleeping? Some days it depends. Flip a coin.
Isn't that the worst question? I hate when people ask that.
Yeah, it's like, no, he's not sleeping.
No.
Do babies sleep? Because right now they don't. Do you remember when your baby slept?
I think that people block that out.
Yes.
That is probably, when you're a new mom, note to everyone listening, never ask a new mom if they're sleeping or if the baby's sleeping, because it's just reminding them how tired they are, or that, and I know, again, 2020, I think the conversation's been more open where it's like, what am I doing wrong that my baby's not sleeping? You're not doing anything wrong. Babies are going to be babies, and it's going to be really, really hard. And we need to almost like reframe that narrative of like motherhood is, and that's why you have a great Motherhood Unscripted. I mean, that's what anyone who's thinking of becoming a mom or a new mom needs to hear. Like, okay, I'm not alone in this.
No.
I'm not the only one struggling. We go on Instagram and it's like, you see these pictures, and a lot of, influencers will say like, don't worry, like behind the scenes. Well, you know what? Show me behind the scenes.
Right.
Like, prove it. Yeah. Prove it that you're really tired.
Right. We want to see that realness. And I think that that's the thing that people will benefit from the most, is showing those unfiltered pictures and being honest and saying, motherhood it's beautiful, but it's also very messy. And you know what? We're here to kind of just like help you clean up the mess along the way.
And know that you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. You can get through this, but you're not alone. And it's okay. There's so much guilt, I think, attached to just what you're doing, as you were explaining. And in my case, I have this massive amount of guilt at times where, yes, I'm focusing on obviously making sure my son is eating and, eating as well as he can. I just tapped into the whole making the baby food thing. I tried the ice tray thing, and it's going pretty well.
Good.
And it's a new challenge, and I've learned to embrace it. And now I'm getting excited about cooking for him, more him than cooking for my husband.
Right. There are times I'm like, she has tons of vegetables, and I'm like, that's the night I'm eating cereal. I'm like, well, I didn't shop for myself.
Right.
I'm thinking too much about her. Again, that's where like a shopping list comes in handy. You think about your tiny human, but also don't forget about yourself.
Right. And so that's the guilt that I'm feeling right now. I'll be completely honest. I'm turning to what's more convenient for me. I go the extra mile for my son, but when it comes to me, I'm not really treating my body as well as I could right now.
And I see a lot of moms who, like, I love, especially when you practice, I love getting the women who are thinking about becoming pregnant. I love when I get someone, postpartum who's just trying, and I help them. Really, a lot of what I'm doing with them is helping them become a little bit more organized. So when I talk about I'm making those lists for them, like I'm helping the new mom with just figuring it out and keeping it really simple. And then I see a lot of moms who have older kids. Maybe their children are in their 20s, and they're coming to me and they're like, I haven't taken care of myself for the last 20 years. And I look at that and I'm like, I'm sad for them that for the last 20 years, they did not put themselves first, second, third, they were at the bottom of the list. And I'd like to think, with our age group of these new moms now, that we are understanding the importance of self-care. Self-care is a big word right now, but even the idea of like booking doctor's appointments as self-care, that's something I talk to my clients a lot about. When was the last time you saw your doctor? Make sure you set those appointments. Don't just, I need to go do this. Get it done. Self-care is more than just a mani-pedi. It's taking care of yourself. It's booking those appointments. It's taking the, 10 minutes to do something that brings you joy, again, to help bring those stress hormones down. Being a new mom, not that we're always so stressed out about things, but our stress is different. It's shifted. And, we're keeping something alive, and we're trying to keep something happy and healthy, and also manage a home. And for those of us who are working, it's balancing that, and it's really hard. And so I love when I get the younger moms, because one, it makes me happy that they're taking that step, like, okay, I need to clean up my diet. I'm going to go meet with a nutritionist. But it's also that they're thinking about themselves, that they're not, putting their needs not even on the table, which you see, I have seen. And those women, they're tired, they're cranky, they're not sleeping well, they may be starting menopause, and they're going into menopause feeling terrible. And so I love to catch women when they're, earlier, like, okay, let's clean this up now. Let's start these habits now, so that by the time your children are 20, you're in a great place.
That's such a, wow, I never even think of that. And, just as you're describing menopause, it's almost like the cycle is kind of starting again. Like your kids are leaving, but your body's going through all these changes, and your mind is shifting yet again. It's like this never changing cycle of changes. If that makes any sense. But it's just constantly, women are just, I don't know.
And what's interesting is, like, during menopause, that's when women start really focusing on themselves, because they're like, wait a minute, I don't want to feel this way. What changes do I need to make? And but there's like a big gap in between that I don't know what's happening. And I think the culture is changing. You know, we are focusing more on our happiness. You know, we are seeing that the happier we are, the healthier we are, that everything is connected. I mean, that's something definitely with Nourish and Nosh that my approach has shifted now, is looking at the whole body. Like, I'm not just giving meal plans. Like, I'm talking to people about their sleep habits, everything that focuses on improving the body as a whole. Not just, I mean, the food, obviously that's what I'm an expert in, but no one's going to listen to me if they're exhausted.
Right.
You know, so it's looking at the whole body. But I like to believe, and maybe it's wishful thinking, that the new moms now are realizing, like, I need to make sure I'm okay. I mean, there's all these groups now with like exercise groups, like for moms. There's like yoga classes, like bring your child. Like, it's, I think there is a shift that's pretty awesome. So, you know, hopefully it keeps going in that direction.
Yeah. And like you said, it's kind of about finding those activities and things that bring you joy and looking for that community. And I'll be completely honest, I feel as though over the summer during my maternity leave, I was trying to actively find activities. And, you know, it's not like flu season, so it's a little different of a season. It's nicer out and you can get outside and, you know, connecting with other moms, going for walks, you know, just reaching out. And something else I learned is you have this, it's like this new common thread that once you become a mom and you learn about, you know, someone else who has a child, it's not necessarily like, oh, you know, what kind of music do you like to listen to or what activities do you like to do? It's more like, you have a child? Oh, great. I have a child too. Let's talk. And then you I mean, it's like
an easy way to like break. I mean, never have I ever given my phone number to so many strangers. Like, outside, like when you're in like the library, it's like, oh, your child's the same age as mine. Here's my number. We should hang out.
Call me.
Like we did swim classes and like we all exchange numbers. And it's like, in any other, if you went to like the gym by yourself, like you're not gonna like look at the woman on the treadmill next to you and be like, hey, we need to hang, give me your number. So there's
she'd look at you and go, sure,
I'm gonna go report you at the front desk for being a creep. So there is definitely that. No, you're absolutely right. There is sort of it's like you join a club in a weird way, but it's like a club where everyone's welcome. And
And I think the biggest thing, if you do join one of those clubs, you know, and I'm figuratively saying club, it's don't bring any judgment to the table. You know, it's what works for one mom may not work for another. And I found myself with some friends saying, oh, you know, my child already has a tooth that popped through. And I'm like, oh, my child doesn't have any teeth yet. Is that a bad thing? And you know, I'm also finding some other situations where, you know, some moms are like, oh, yeah, I make all the homemade baby food. I do this, this, and this, and this. And, you know, I hear that and I became a little overwhelmed going, oh, my gosh, I'm not doing that for my son. Should I be doing that? You know, so you have to find what works best for you. And look at those resources. Take a
ask
little
your
bit.
friends.
Ask
like as
around.
Much as I'm a nutritionist, the whole like food prep thing. I talked to one friend who I admired, and I see the way she cooks for her children. Children are probably, I think they're 6 and 8, so they're older. But I would see what she would do, so I reached out to her and I'm like, tell me what you did, like what worked for you. And instead of, and I read books, don't get me wrong, but you do start to feel bad, like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. But if you have that one go-to friend or podcast or, you know, wherever, where they're like, hey, you know, this works for me. It's not 100%. Like, I still gave my daughter pouches and things like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Because it works. If it's easy, it's on the go. And so it's the whole, and I do it too. Like, my daughter doesn't talk a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, is she? And I talked to the doctor about it. And the doctor's like, she's fine. Like, she says enough. Like, you're fine. Like, stop comparing. She didn't say this, but it's like I was comparing myself to someone else on Instagram. And that's a weird part about motherhood, because you're probably like, hey, my daughter has a ton of teeth. But then the person on the other end is probably thinking like, well, my child doesn't have a ton of teeth, you know?
Right.
So that's something too, to always, you know, what works for one person may not work for the other, but don't, you know, be understanding of other moms and their emotions, and to not say, you know, not brag about things. I mean, I never did that, but and I don't really see it, but it exists, or, you know.
It's out there.
And I'm sure as they get older, it probably gets worse.
Yeah, with the competitiveness and everything.
Yes.
But I think that, you know, if you're open to finding your community, or if you don't have a community, I mean, certainly you can join us here on Mommyhood Unscripted. This can be your virtual community.
There's a lot of virtual communities out there, which I think are super helpful for those moms who don't have that support system or the local friends. And I see the questions often asked, like, how do you meet other mom friends? And I know you got to exchange the numbers. Like, when you find a mom who seems friendly, and usually they are, because
they're a mom
and they're in the same exact boat as you are, you know, it helps to kind of form that support system, and also to bounce ideas off, like, hey, this isn't working for my child. You know, the amount of people I've asked about sleep questions, you know,
oh my gosh.
I mean, that, like, I feel like that's just like a topic.
Sleep, and, you know, it doesn't matter what your shift is, you're just not getting enough of it.
It's
hard, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to function. I mean, we're both working moms, and it's, you want to be on, and you want to be on with your kid. And I mean, I know we're kind of getting off nutrition right now with this topic, but the time spent with your kid, you want it to be meaningful and constructive. And sometimes I always, you know, grasp with, I'm not taking him upstairs into his room to read him the, you know, his scientific books at the periodic table. Like, you know, is he going to be okay? Is that bad? You know,
He's fine.
That's what you need to be hearing, is it's going to be okay. It's fine.
Right.
You know,
and it's, we put pressure on, I mean, there's times even like this morning where she just kept handing me the same book over and over and over. And I'm like, oh, go get a different book. I don't know if I think she understands that. She just kept handing me the same book. And I'm like, do I need to, like, be, and I'm like, you get in your head, like, do I have to just keep reading the same words to her?
Right.
You know, instead it was like, well, let's find Elmo. Like, I'm sick of reading the same sentence to you. Like, now we're just going to look for Elmo on each page. And it's hard because I was really tired. You know, this is occurring at an early hour for me, and it's a struggle.
It is.
And I can't put pressure on myself to be perfect all the time. No one's perfect. And that's, you know, that's where, you know, the unscripted part of your podcast is great, because it is important to talk about those struggles, because sometimes it's not discussed enough. And especially the people who maybe you just tend to follow specific things online and that are always painting just a beautiful picture. And it makes you feel bad when you are a hot mess and you have spit up in your hair and you
can't color within the lines. It's just not going.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is happening to so many other women. And that's where, again, that's a huge reason why my approach shifted with so many things. And I know, and when I say my approach shifted, I'm giving the same spiel to my retirees who, in a weird way, are like also sick of cooking and have cooked for their family for the last 50 years, and they're like, well, now I'm done. I'm like, well, time out. Right. You're only 70. Like, you're not done cooking or preparing nourishing meals for yourself. Like, you're not throwing in the towel. So we just need to change our approach, you know, or teaching people how much food to cook, because that's something that they struggle with. You know, it's always a challenge no matter what stage of life you're in.
That's comforting to know. You know,
yes,
that we're not alone, that we're going to be met with these series of challenges depending on where you are in life. And did you expect that it was going to be this hard, motherhood in general?
I found myself, things I said, again, someone who didn't have kids, like, I'm never going to do blank. I'm doing. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, whatever works. You know, like, I remember when I first went back to work after maternity leave, it coincided with the 4-month sleep regression. So she gave me like 2 weeks of, you know, I'm like, yes, I can do this. I'm feeling great. And then it was probably that 3rd week, she just stopped. It was awful. And I eventually started bringing her into bed with me, because I'm like, I can't not sleep. I can't be wide awake and expect to work, you know, 8 to 10 hours. So I was definitely, that was hard. The sleep thing was 1,000 times harder than I expected. I'm sometimes impressed at what I can do with a little sleep, which is kind of cool. But then many times it catches up with you. I've never been sicker in the last year of my life. I've never been as sick as I used to have a great immune system that is gone. That's really frustrating, because then that is affecting everything in my life. Every stage is so different, and I'm not going to say it happens quickly, because when you're doing it, it feels really slow.
Feels forever, yeah.
Like the thought of pureeing baby food feels like it was so long ago, and like it wasn't. It wasn't that long ago. Every stage, like right now, we're in like pre-talking, early communication stage, and like now she's telling me what she wants. Like that's weird.
Yeah.
Or like me saying, "Do you want this?" and she's nodding her head yes. Like she has an opinion, and that's weird. I kind of miss when she didn't have an opinion. She would just like eat whatever I put in front of her, like do whatever we're doing.
You will in the teen years too, I'm sure.
I know, right? So that's the phases. I didn't predict the phases, and I'm enjoying them. I'm definitely trying to be, in the moment. I do often hate when people say, "Oh, it goes by so fast." It's like, leave me alone. Like I'm enjoying the moment, and sometimes like I do want this short phase, like. The 4 molars going in right now, like I would love this phase to be over. I want those teeth to just magically be here and for her sleep to go back to being normal-ish. But it's the phases I never was prepared for. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
It's hard and it's messy, but it is the most rewarding job.
There's a lot, as much as I didn't want to read the book 4 times today, her finding the little Elmo on the back of the cover, I didn't even see it. Like she's pointing and I'm like, oh my God, it's a tiny little Elmo like hanging on the barcode. And I was like, look at you, little girl, pointing this out to me. Like that blew my mind this morning. And I know it's something so small, but it brings such joy. She said hi this morning, which you would think she would, hi is such an easy thing to say, but she appropriately said it this morning. And it's like, I'm like proud, so those little moments are, and you know what? No one prepared me for those moments. Like how happy you are when your child does something for the first time. I did not realize that was going to be so, like you think about, like, and that's what helps when you are working. Like you think about it. Like I watch videos of her dancing on my phone at work. Sometimes like if I'm feeling a little low, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to watch this video. It's going to cheer me up. And it does. Like it's a magical but messy. And it's funny because the messy things are so small, and you just, as a mom, you just kind of do it. That's that superhero power of just like handling certain situations and gracefully and at times kind of panicking, but you just kind of do it, clean up, move on, and that's pretty remarkable too.
Yeah, and I think that's you living in the moment is, seeing that she found Elmo right above the barcode there. Those are those little snapshots of parenthood that you just want to live inside that moment forever because of the joy that it brings.
Right.
But it's funny how when you talk to our parents, grandparents, they don't really remember the 4 molars coming in as much as they remember the first time you said hello or which is why I think maybe they forget how they felt if someone asked them, are you sleeping at all?
And that's the thing, like, or, you bring up a good point. Like, we do kind of start to block out some of the negative, and maybe that's just our body's way of, coping with all of it. Like, I think back to a year ago. It was a year ago I went back to work, and it was February 1st is when, like, the year of sickness kicked in, and it's like, I do look back at that time because I'm like, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power this year to not repeat last year. And because it was just like a long stretch of time, but it has to do obviously with nutrition, again, that's that big picture. It's nutrition, it's sleep, it's protecting myself against, both of our children go to daycare, and it's like, that's tough because it's germs being introduced, but then how do you increase your immunity? So all these things happen, although that's still fresh in my mind, I'm probably blocking out like the lowest of the lows during that time and just focusing on the fact that I got out of it. And I remember driving to work one day and feeling good and being like, I forgot what it felt like to feel really good in the morning and like capturing that moment and being like, I have to remember this. Like if I'm ever in a dark place, like I can remember I can feel good, but it takes work, and that's where, again, you're throwing something else on a mom's plate. Like, oh, by the way, clean your hands when you pick up your child. And before you, all the little things, like make sure you're drinking enough water, making sure you sleep with a humidifier if you're sick or something or whatever. You do it for the little humans, you can do it for yourself too.
Right. And and I feel the guilt that I have on, being the best mom that I can be comes back to nourishing myself. And that's where I'm lapsing. I'm not drinking enough water, and I feel as though I'm not nourishing my body in the best way that I can. And of course that's tied into, as you do the whole body approach, the sleep, it has this like this cyclical effect, right?
Well, when you don't sleep, certain hormones are being released and not being released. And so you may find the next morning that you're extra hungry. If I ever have a client who tells me, this happened the other day with a man. So with females, sometimes I can ask, where are you in your cycle? But with a man, he's like, I just couldn't stop eating. I was so hungry all day. And the first question I asked was, did you sleep enough the night before? And he looked at me and he's like, no. I'm like, well, it's all tied into your appetite, like your hunger. It's all tied into sleep. And again, looking at the big picture, if we are watching TV late at night and we're getting that stimulation both from, the blue light from the TV screen or the phone or the iPad or whatever, and our melatonin's not where it should be because we're doing things to literally, slow the release. Yeah. And we're doing, and not to mention, and I know you're on the news, but if we watch news late night, sometimes it's not the most positive. And so then that starts releasing all these hormones. And so then we go to lay down and we're trying to turn our mind off, but our mind keeps racing. We don't get enough sleep. We wake up, we're a little bit hungrier. At that point, maybe you reach for a high carbohydrate breakfast because it's easy, because it's quick, because the child's crying, you grab some toast with some butter, and that quickly converts to sugar. So then you start your day, it sort of starts the trajectory of your day. The blood sugar goes up, it immediately crashes. Hour and a half later, you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to eat his puffs. I'm just going to eat his gummies or whatever. That's a common thing with moms. They'll start eating the leftover food for the children. And so it starts, sometimes to break that cycle, I'll start either with sleep or I'll start with, no matter what you're craving, start your morning with protein. Skip the simple carbs. Even in certain cases, I'll say, skip the complex carbs. So even if people are like, but it's a whole grain piece of toast with 1 million seeds, still converts to sugar. I want protein. And a smear of almond butter or peanut butter is never really enough. It tastes good, but that's not giving you quite enough. So maybe you start your day with eggs or a smoothie or yogurt or Greek yogurt, of course, or cottage cheese or something that's more high protein based. I even have people who eat like chicken sausage stir fries in the morning.
Really? Oh, with like scrambled eggs or something?
Sometimes
Spinach?
with, sometimes without. They'll just take leftover vegetables from the night before and do a quick stir fry with, sliced up chicken sausage, and they're getting their protein in. Now, having said that, it does have more sodium, so then I always say with everyone, make sure you're getting your water in throughout the entire day. And if you're a woman who's breastfeeding, in those first couple weeks when you come home, the second you start feeding or nursing your child, you are just overcome with thirst. That was something no one ever prepared me for.
Oh, yeah.
Where I would almost get angry, like, I need water. I need it like 5 seconds ago.
I need a water bottle pronto.
Right now. But I can't get up because I'm still getting the hang of this, and I don't want to move because their latch is good. And so hydration is incredibly important for nursing moms, but that doesn't stop. Hydration is important for, especially during pregnancy. I happened to be pregnant during an incredibly hot summer. And so that was something that was always on the forefront of my mind, even though when you're pregnant, you have to go to the bathroom a million times. It is what it is, but you have to make sure you're maintaining levels of hydration, because it's not just about you at that moment. It's about the baby that you're growing. And so hydration is something, especially in the winter, but that can combat fatigue. It can combat any GI issues that we're experiencing. Things change after you have a baby down there. And so making sure you're hydrated will kind of help that situation. And it also helps with hunger as well. That's a common thing. Another big thing is I'll see moms who just go 8 hours without eating. Their child has snacks. And, this is something we're not really experiencing, or we kind of are, but especially in older toddlers, if they don't get a snack in, what happens to them? They become monsters.
Crazy.
It happens to us too. We just are really good at hiding it. Right. And so when your child has maybe a good eating schedule, that's advice I give to a lot of new moms or moms of older children, is put your eating schedule on top of theirs. You're not eating the same food as them, but eat at the same, and I'm not saying like nosh on things literally all day long, but pick those times and try to stick to it. And if you have an unconventional schedule, just figure it out and make it work for you within your schedule. Not everyone's eating breakfast at 6 and a snack at 10 and lunch at 12. Sounds great, but not everyone does that.
Right.
So you have to find what's going to work for you.
Yep. And that's the name of the game with motherhood, right?
You betcha. And don't judge the mom who, is struggling.
Right.
Instead, be supportive and say, hey, do you need, here's a recipe that I really, like, that the kids seem to like. It's very bland. I shouldn't say bland, but it's not, spicy. And share those recipes. And that's where the community comes in. What works for one, it could work for another.
It could, yeah.
And share that information.
And ask people how they're doing.
Yes.
So often we don't take that second to say, hey, how are you doing?
Not about the baby. It's like, how are you doing? Yeah,
Right.
That's a really good point.
We need you to be good because guess what? You are responsible for that baby.
What's the expression they say? Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's like, with moms, like, our cups, like, where is the cup? I don't know. I left it on another table. Like, I don't even know where the cup is.
Absolutely. So yeah, take that extra second to check in with the fellow moms or moms-to-be or people who are thinking about having kids and aren't sure if they want to get into it.
Don't just tell them the lovely stories.
Yes. No, be real.
Be real. Because nothing's worse than going into it. And I've heard this. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have an older sister and cousins and friends who went through it who did tell me some of the nitty-gritty. Thank God, because when you're in it and you're like, no one prepared me for this. Or,
right.
So be honest with your girlfriends.
Yeah. And it's also good to be honest and say, but it's so rewarding. And people would not keep having kids if it was the worst thing in the world.
That's something that, oddly enough, during my labor, that went through my head. I'm
Really?
like, women do this all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not the first person going through this. It's...
Every second a baby is being born around the world.
Yes.
And it will continue that way.
Yes.
So you will get through it. You will get through it. Anything else, Cara, that you want to touch on before we have to go?
One thing I'll say that, and it reminds me because I chatted with someone yesterday about this. If you're a mom or if you're thinking, or if you know someone who's thinking about becoming a mom, that is a really important time to clean up. I mean, it's always a good time to clean up our nutrition, but especially even before, we were talking about this earlier, like your womb health, like before the womb is inhabited, that's a good time to sort of assess your situation. Are your stress levels too high? Are you, drinking too much alcohol too frequently? This is the time in your life to start checking in and saying, what steps can I take to be a healthier individual? And that's even before, that could be any time in the process before you get pregnant, or before you even want to try to get pregnant. And for those going through, fertility issues, that's something that they think about when they're in the issue. So that's why I try to catch women early. Like, think about your diet now. Think about what you're putting on your body, what you're putting in your body now. And once you become pregnant, we think about everything we put into our mouth. We're thinking about the baby. But I think it's so important to think about that before we even get pregnant. So that's something I counsel women. I have a whole pregnancy course I work with women on, but I love when I can catch them before they're even thinking about it.
And that can turn into a good habit throughout your life that you can carry with.
And that's when, pregnancy is really, really hard, especially those first 3 months. But after that, once you're in the second trimester, because first trimester is always tough. As a nutritionist, I've counseled people through the first trimester, and sometimes I'm like, okay, get through this. I'll see you at week, 14. I'll give you tips, but you're,
it's hard. You don't know what to expect, and then if you do deal with the morning sickness, for example, that's a whole other bag of beans that you just need to survive. And it's a little victory getting up in the morning and getting changed.
Exactly. And that's usually I'm like, all right, then come back to see me and we'll talk about this stuff, because now you're in an easier place to receive counseling. But it's hard. I mean, your body goes through changes, and your body continues to change. Hormones continue to change. And so by having a good base, a good healthy base, you're setting yourself up for making these habits really strong. Because once you have a baby, it's not like every single habit you have goes out the window. It's not like you don't put on pajamas to go to bed. It's not like you don't at some point, wash your hair. Things may change, but you still do you haven't changed completely. A big chunk of you has, but if the habits are so ingrained, it's easier to keep them because you've been doing it for years, So it's start early.
Yeah.
That's always my advice.
Oh, that's such great advice, and just a little snippet of the amazing advice that you shared with us today. So I can't thank you enough for being here, my first guest for
Yes.
Mommyhood Unscripted, and just, for bearing with me in this new experience, if you will,
Yes,
in the
yes.
podcast
It's so
world, in
exciting.
the motherhood world. And remind us again of your business.
So it's Nourish and Nosh Nutrition based in Madison. I do virtual, so I work with people
great.
around the country. You can follow me on Instagram, Nourish Nosh CT, and I'm on Facebook as well.
Awesome. And we will have all the information provided on our website and on all the social media platforms as well. So if you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to this new podcast, Mommyhood Unscripted. It's available on iTunes. It's available on Spotify or even Google Play, and you can share it with your friends. Heck, you could share it with any mom you know or a mom-to-be, anyone going through menopause, any men out there that want to know what we go through. Share it with everyone. It's great. And please take a second also to review this, because it does help the show grow. So if you want any questions answered as well, if you want any questions for Cara to answer as well, I can pass along that to you. But any comments on the show, please have them come my way, because I am new to this and I so appreciate you guys bearing with me on all of this. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's at Nicole Nalepa TV. And I'm Nicole Nalepa. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you're doing great, Mama. You're doing great.